Come in. Come in. When you come in, please share. If you don't mind. Let's talk dreams again. I had such a great response to the dreams that I think we should continue it. What do you think about doing it at least once a week? Hi, Carolyn. It's good to see you. I love consistency. You're very consistent. I like that. Mr. Frankie, how are you? Come on in. When you come in, if you don't mind, do you mind sharing? Do you mind sharing? I appreciate it. Last week we had such a great response with the dream interpretation. I did the category of a warfare dream. And today I want to talk about a self-conditioned dream. And self-conditioned dreams reveal the heart and where we stand with God. So I have a really good one today, and I think you guys are really going to like this one. So as the intro, I just wanted to do a few things to explain the purpose of dreams, but I'll wait until we build up our crowd a little bit. So when you come in, please share. I don't see anybody sharing. Are you going to cooperate with me? Let's build up the audience. And what I would like to see happen with this platform is that you will start sending in your dreams, and it will become more participative and interactive, which means that when you send in your dreams, I will actually go live with one of your dreams and make this a whole lot more interesting. And I think we'll get a lot more participation if folks know that they can possibly be the chosen candidate to have their dream interpreted live as I'm live streaming. So are we sharing? Are we sharing? Let's share. Please share. So real quick, let's go through. Let me turn this off. Let's go through, why does God use dreams? One of the reasons that God uses dreams, he tells us in the Bible, if you will look at Joel 2:28, and it reads like this: "It will come about after this that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions." Then also in Acts 2:17, sounds very familiar to the Old Testament application that we just used in Joel. And it reads, "In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams." And so you see that dreams were not only for the Old Testament, but it's also a New Testament phenomenon. And so God did not do away with dreams. And so that's why you see in the title of this particular scope, biblical dream interpretation, because you have Sigmund Freud interpretation, which is very sensual. Everything that he applies to a dream has to be of some sexual connotation. And so that's a perversion, though, of the gift of understanding the office of the dreamer. That's a real perversion. And so that's one reason, is because the Lord said that he would pour out his spirit. So as a result of the Lord pouring out his spirit, we shall prophesy, we shall have visions, and then we shall dream dreams. And so that's an attribute or a byproduct of actually operating in the spirit, that you should be able to prophesy, and that when you dream, you should be able to understand your dreams because you are now filled with the Holy Spirit. The New Testament believer should be filled with the Holy Spirit. And if you are not, contact me and we'll make sure that that happens. Secondly, Job's 33:14-18 says this: "Indeed, God speaks once or twice, yet no one notices it. In a dream, a vision of the night, when sound asleep falls on men, while they slumber in their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction, that he may turn man aside from his conduct and keep man from pride. He keeps back his soul from the pit and his life from passing over into Sheol, which is hell. So if you go to Job 33, 14 through 18, it actually enumerates several reasons why God seals instructions in our heart while we're asleep. One of the reasons that he seals instructions in our heart while we're asleep through the vehicle of dreams, he said it keeps us from pride. And the dream that I'm going to interpret today will be a great example of that particular reference of how God keeps men from pride. And how does he actually do that in your dream language? But then it also says that it changes a man's conduct, which means he gives you instructions in your dreams that changes the course of your behavior or even modifies your attitude. And your behavior changes because you've had modification in your attitude. And so we have two things that has happened because of a result of instructions being sealed in your heart. He turns you aside from bad behavior, or he instructs you in the way to go, thereby attributing to modified behavior and new conduct. Or he keeps a man's heart from pride. He also keeps our soul from the pit. That means going down into a low place of adversity, and that comes with warning dreams that keeps you from a place of destruction, a place of despair. And he causes your life to pass over Sheol, which is hell. Are you guys sharing when you come in? Are you sharing? Hi, highly anointed. Hi, Carolyn, Linda. He makes me to lay down in green pastures of sleep and rest. Yes, he does. So two things that he's done. He's told us that he'll pour out his spirit upon all flesh and that we would dream dreams. So all men, whether you're saved or not, dream dreams. Remember the story of Nebuchadnezzar? He was unsaved and God gave him a dream, and God was actually trying to keep him from pride. But he did not heed the voice of the dream interpretation. And God had to let things take its natural course that would modify his attitude, bring him to a place of humility, and then he brought him out of that pit. The third reason why God, the purposes of dreams, the Lord promised to do 4 things in our dreams. He speaks through prophecy, which is to immature children. We can be immature, although we're adults. We can be immature in our walk with the Lord. He gives us dreams and visions. To mature saints, he gives, which are his servants, he gives prophecy. And then he gives us signs and wonders. So these are all 4 promises that the Lord has guaranteed to the believer and to the saint. The 4th reason why he promises, or the purpose of dreams, dreams capture our undivided attention. It's something about the hustle and bustle of our regular day life that God can't seem to get our attention because we're so consumed with our everyday life, with the cares of life. We get caught up in the cares of life. And that way we block out the voice of God. And God has to sometimes interrupt our dream language, our sleep state, and intervene or interject a dream with a message that we otherwise would not be able to hear because we're so consumed and wrapped up in our day-to-day activities. So we just went through several reasons or purposes for God giving us dreams. And we have several instances of why he does that. But today I wanted to go over the category of self-conditioned dream. And this dream came in from a young lady. And I want to read it to you verbatim as the dream reads that was sent in. The name of this dream is called The Incredible Hawk. And she says, "Hi, Lisa. I had the following dream, and it was kind of disturbing. I wanted to ask Pastor, but he's out of town and I can't reach him. Do you know what it means? Here's the dream. The dream I had a little while ago today, my cell phone rang, and when I looked at the name, Anna was showing. I thought it was weird because I don't know anyone by the name Anna. As you know, names must be programmed into the phone. When I answered the phone, it was Craig, screaming and talking loud and crazy, saying, 'You have no business talking to my wife about nothing, especially about me.' He was really loud, like when he's preaching and trying to make a point. I said, 'I am not your wife. Don't talk to me crazy like that. Calm down. You keep talking to me like that if you want to, because I can go toe to toe and blow to blow, because you got the wrong one, baby.' So she's a little feisty in real life, as you can tell from the dream. Then I realized that wasn't really him. You know what I mean? So I hung the phone up. Maybe a day later, Eric, my husband, and I were standing outside of a huge building with long wide steps like an old century library or church or century church. Craig approached me, yelling and screaming at me again. He was dressed in old tattered clothing, very unkempt, like the Incredible Hulk, hunched over, huge hands, and it looked like him, but it didn't look like him. I can't really explain it. Eric told him, 'Leave my wife alone or I'll have to hurt you. Don't keep talking to my wife like that.' I said, 'If you jump, I'll jump too.' Craig proceeded to come towards me, and Eric grabbed him in a bear hug, trying to restrain him. Craig kept wrestling, so Eric body slammed him to the ground, and I started hitting him. The people just stood around looking and never tried to intervene. Eric said, 'I don't know what's wrong with you.' Then I woke up." Are we sharing, guys? Let's share. Let's get as many people as we can into this dream interpretation, because this is a really good dream interpretation. And it's really reflective of how God gives us a dream, but he's talking to us about ourselves and about a spiritual condition or even a natural condition that we may be in, that he wants to, what was one of the things that I stated earlier out of the 4 reasons why, or the purposes of God giving us dreams. One of them is to turn the course of our conduct. And so this dream will turn the course of this dreamer's conduct. So the interpretation reads as follows. The name Anna stood out in the dream. And remember, Anna's going to be key to interpreting this dream. It was a lot to be said about the name that showed up on the screen. Dreamer. The message was divinely inspired to impart wisdom and seal in your heart instructions. Hebrews 12:15 states, "See to it that no one misses the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." Listen to the name here. The name Anna means gracious. Appearing on the screen is the Father's way of giving you a picture of grace. Grace is ringing through. The Father's grace is ringing through this dream. So the Father is calling her up, and it's a call of grace. Greg is a minister of the gospel in the dream. The gospel is a message of the Father's grace toward us. The phone is ringing in with a divine message that you are to see grace as a ministry principle to answer everyone. Remember, she picks up the phone after she sees the name of the caller, which happens to be Anna, Anna is interpreted grace. And so the phone is ringing in with a divine message from heaven. Essentially, the Lord is ringing in her dream language with a divine message to her. And it's a divine message of grace. And the grace is a ministry principle that the Lord is trying to get her to operate in. According to Colossians 4:6. You are to pick up on grace. God is dealing with a matter of the heart here. Remember I told you we're talking about self-conditioned dreams here? The Father reveals the hidden issue of her heart through the accusation of the minister brought against her in the dream. You must rid yourself of all such things as demonstrated and yelled by Greg in the dream. Greg said she was angry. She came across with rage. She also became a little malicious, and she was very slanderous with her language. And she did exhibit some filthy language as well. Ephesians 4:31 states it like this. Get rid of all bitterness, all rage, all anger, all brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Dreamer, you are ministering to people, more specifically, her husband, Eric, her covenant husband, Eric, from a place of bitterness. God is dealing with the condition of this woman's heart, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And she has not been speaking with grace. Her words are not seasoned with grace. They're very malicious. They're very angry. And she deals with her husband with a spirit of rage. And so the Lord is wanting to deal with the matters of her heart. The dream reveals you are ready to fight and get a handle on those things that are driving you to minister in the spirit of anger. You are open to instructions on how to refrain from anger that only leads to evil. Did you guys catch that? Greg was the minister of the gospel in the dream. And God was trying to get her to understand that every minister has to, because she's a minister in real life, every minister has a responsibility to minister from a place of grace. But if you have things that are hidden in your heart, it can enable you or hinder you from ministering from a place of grace. And you actually start ministering from a place of bitterness, and bitterness chokes out grace. According to Galatians, bitterness chokes out grace. And we don't want to ever minister from a place that grace is not in full supply, because God gives us favor and we should extend favor, but our words should be laced with grace so that it can be words of healing. So we want to talk about his incredible grace. Remember that she turned into like this incredible Hulk figure where she bust out of her clothes and out of her wardrobe, and the clothes was very unkept, and she exhibited she exuded the persona of the Hulk. And we all grew up on the Hulk, who turned into a fit of rage, and whenever he turned into a fit of rage, he became green. And so if we can all get a picture of how we look when we're angry, when we're jealous, when we're envious, oh my goodness, I think we'll all be a little more apt to change and modify our behavior if we can see it on display like that. But the problem is sometimes buried in our heart, and we don't even know that we're responding like that. And it takes others to see that display. And if we're open to correction, if we're open to rebuke, that you even have to be open for someone to critique you and to be able to take criticism and to be able to do something with a critique. Some of us are so prideful that you can't even be critiqued, or no one can offer you constructive criticism, even in ministry. And so this was God's way of bypassing her flesh This was God's way of bypassing her logic and going straight to the matter of the heart of the issue here. And so the symbol of the hawk is how those close to her really see her when she's made angry. And you know what happens when people get angry? They manipulate your response. Have you ever had your response manipulated or someone that made you feel like you were walking on eggshells when you were around them? I know people like that. They manipulate your response with anger, with outbursts, because you don't want to see them in a fit of rage. So you are not at liberty to express yourself. You're not at liberty to tell them about themselves because you're afraid or you fear that you're going to see the hawk show up on the scene. And so to avoid that kind of conflict that's out of control, really, you just bypass ever been able to confront the issues or the matters of their heart because of the response that you fear. The hawk had a famous quote when angered that went something like this: "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." Her husband is left to contend with her alter ego once she's transformed by the spirit of anger. Your alter ego is your inner defense to protect the weaker you, the insecure you, the childish, the immature part of you that hasn't grown up, that has not matriculated through childhood and through adolescence, and it hasn't reached that place of maturity because it's stuck wherever you had that experience. Whatever experience that you had that crippled you or that stymied you, that's where you're stuck in that particular aspect of that matriculation into maturity. But the Lord is wanting to confront that immature aspect of her that's stuck in responding in a temper tantrum, because usually we throw that temper tantrum in our childish stage of life, that when we can't articulate what's wrong with us, when we fail to communicate with words, when our vocabulary is not expansive enough to communicate our heart issues, and some of us get stuck in that place that we're not articulate enough to be able to communicate the issues of our hearts. And we see this a lot in marriages and relationships, and we respond like that 2-year-old toddler. We throw tantrums. The husband put his hand through the wall, or the woman shuts down and fails to communicate her issues with her husband, and she shuts down for weeks at a time. Not only do she shut down communication, she shut up the flow of love too, and you know what I mean. And until she's done manipulating him with her tantrums, like a 2-year-old, then he's left to contend with the immature aspect of a grown woman that's stuck in an adolescence or a toddler phase of maturing. And this was the Lord's way of intervening and saying, enough is enough with your immature way of responding, that I need you to grow up in this particular area of ministry, because her first ministry was to her husband. And if she couldn't minister grace unto her husband, the Lord is not going to be able to trust her to minister unto his children in the church. So her husband has asked the Lord, where does this behavior come from? Remember, towards the end of her dream, he questioned her in the dream and says, where does this come from? Why are you responding like this? So that's her husband actually crying out to the Father and saying, I don't understand her responses. I don't understand why I keep getting this kind of response from my wife. But the Lord was saying, and so the husband was asking, Lord, where does this behavior come from? In his attempts to understand her drastic difference between her and her superpower ego, who comes to save and to rescue her. Her superhero is fueled and empowered by rage and anger. I don't know how many women on the other side of this scope or this Facebook Live has lived with a man who anger shows up quite often, that you can never have dialogue with him in a sensible manner because this alter ego comes on the scene, and it's his way of projecting strength. He doesn't know how to project strength in meekness, and so he does it in an abusive manner. And that's his way of trying to get respect. That's his way of strong-arming you into submission. And that's not God's way of for us to operate and to interact with one another in marriage. So that thing goes both ways when you're very immature in your growth and you're stymied in your development emotionally. A lot of us have low EQs, low emotional quotas or quotients. Just like we can have low IQs or high IQs, a lot of us are very unsuccessful in relationships because we have low emotional quotients. And so here's an example that God is intervening with his incredible grace, not the Incredible Hulk, but with his incredible grace to actually alter or modify her conduct and her behavior. So remember, she was standing on this huge step in front of like a huge library or a church. She couldn't distinguish whether it was a library or a church, but she was standing on this huge step. So this was God's way of telling her this would be one huge step in the right direction. So it's time for her to start taking steps towards deliverance from her past disappointments and wounds. Obviously, we're dealing with an individual with open wounds because she keeps responding out of her woundedness. So every time her husband triggers this cue in her, it's because he keeps touching that place of woundedness that hasn't been healed in her, that can go back to her childhood, things that could have happened in her adolescence, in relationships, in broken relationships with a mother or father while she was growing up. I'm not sure of where this woundedness comes from, but what the dream does reveal that she indeed carries this woundedness that's carried over into her marriage and is responsible for how she responds to her husband. So the building is an edifice of your life choices. Whenever you see like a church or a home or a library, something like that, God is speaking about the building blocks of your life. And so it's actually talking about the structure of her life. And the structure of her life is built choice by choice here. So she's ready to make choices that take her in the right direction. And when she starts making choices that take her in the right direction, she'll start to demonstrate God's grace again in her life. And she'll glorify the Father by making better choices. It's a season of inner confrontation. Remember, we started out talking about this dream is a dream of self-condition. This dream revealed to her a heart matter, something that was going on to her. Dreams can be either intrinsic or extrinsic. Intrinsic meaning being internal to you. 95% of the dreams that we dream are about ourselves. Rarely do God give you dreams about others. God typically is addressing you and your life choices, your structure of living, your substructure, your foundation of your life, your faith, and things of that nature. But even when you dream about other people, because remember, she dreamt about the hawk. The hawk was actually another side of her, or a persona that she gives off when she's angry. And we all have different personas, right? That makes up the whole of who we are. There's the work persona, there's the church persona, there's the house persona, there's even the marriage, the more intimate aspect of us that nobody else gets to experience about us but a mate. because they get to have a very intimate relationship with you like no other can. So that's what God was saying. So this is a season of inner confrontation for her. So do I change or do I remain the same is the question that this dream is asking her. Do she remain an individual, a wife, a woman that don't speak or minister in grace? Or do she continue to respond from a place of bitterness and woundedness that is very destructive to her marriage, to her home life? And I'm sure this isn't confined just to her marriage, because if she responds like this in the confines of her household, then this thing will spill over in the workplace, because there's no way for you to go to work and segregate that aspect of your persona when you get to work from who you are, because it's intrinsic to you. It's who you are. It's the makeup of who you are. And the only way that you're going to get a different response is if you get to the root of that thing and you uproot that aspect that causes you to respond the way that you do in an ungracious manner. And so deal with the woundedness that's caused the bitterness, that's caused you to respond in anger. And then ultimately it escalates. Anger always escalates, and it's promoted to rage. And we've seen what rage can do. I've seen rage murder women, and we call it domestic violence, that whenever it elevates itself and there's no one there to help to control or to diffuse a situation, it can easily escalate from rage to murder. And that's why the Lord tells us to avoid being, you can be angry, but sin not. So anger is rooted in bitterness. Your Heavenly Father has graced you to deal with every driving issue from your past that blocks you from stepping into your spiritual inheritance. Anger is about to be displaced with the Father's grace. Did you hear that? Somebody type that on the screen for me, because that's powerful. Your anger is about to be displaced with the Father's grace. Lord have mercy. 1 Peter 1:13 declares, therefore, prepare your minds for action. Be self-controlled. Set your hope fully on the grace to be given you when Christ is revealed. The Anointed One is about to reveal himself as a healer, and as the sweet grace that flows from his throne will bind up all old wounds. The Father was ringing through in her dream language to let her know he's about to interrupt her life with a call for her to walk in grace. And so the Anointed One is about to reveal himself. So the Lord actually gives us lots of dreams where he interjects, he intervenes, he interrupts us walking down the wrong path, or us making wrong decisions, or us keep responding out of the wrong cue and having the wrong responses. That's very destructive to our marriages, to our careers. I know several people, because they never got a handle on their anger, that's caused them promotions in the workplace, that's actually caused them to be fired because their response and their words weren't seasoned with grace, and that their heart was not postured in humility. And so this is a self-conditioned dream that dealt with what I had responded to, or had given you guys instructions on in the beginning, why God gives us dreams, the purpose of dreams. And one was to turn the course of our conduct. He was turning the course of her conduct. The Lord was tired of the Hulk, this alter ego that comes to protect her, the weak side of her. And it's amazing how many of us have alter egos. I just said something. And the alter ego is there to protect you, to protect the weaker you from what? Because we don't trust God to be our protection. We don't trust God in our relationships, that ultimately we don't trust being vulnerable in our marriages. We don't trust being vulnerable in partnerships, even in ministry, that we go into ministry suspicious of our leaders, suspicious we even prophesy out of suspicion. You can't even get an authentic prophecy because people are suspicious, because they have all of these internal heart issues that's going on that's cause woundedness, where they're cynical. We're cynical in relationships, in our marriages. We're cynical in relationships on our jobs. We're cynical in relationships, especially in the church. You find now that a lot of people are very cynical in the church now. We don't trust our pastors. The preacher is out to get your money. That's a heart of cynicism. That's a heart that's out to protect its own interests. And so we don't see how when we speak even that's a heart full of wickedness itself, because that's a heart that's self-seeking, that's out for self-interest. And it's not a heart that's bent or has a proclivity towards the kingdom mandate or the kingdom agenda. You're too busy protecting your agenda, which is your money, which ultimately, does he not make that possible for you to be able to make money? That he's ultimately the source, and your job is a resource so that you can have a flow into you, so that financial flow can flow from you. But we don't even trust God because of the wickedness of our hearts. So God was dealing with the matters of the heart. So this was a dream about self-condition. Her condition was that of anger. It had an undercurrent of pride, and pride was actually the root of her issue. And bitterness caused a whole nother, had wrapped itself around the roots of the pride issue, and had even gone out into other aspects of her life. But I did get a response from this dreamer. And the dreamer said that this was right on time, that she had a history of responding in anger, and that she did confirm that this had spilled over not only in her marital life, but also in the workplace, even how she interacted with her children, even in the ministry, how she related to people in ministry. And so this was a very good dream, that the Lord bypassed her logic. He bypassed her all those roadblocks that she had up of self-defense, that alter ego that was in place as a means of self-defense. He bypassed all of that and went straight to the heart of the matter with the dream. And that's what I love about dream language, because how can you argue with God when he comes and visits you face to face in a dream and tells you, like he told Nebuchadnezzar, your issue, my friend, is pride. That didn't come from a person. That the Lord spoke to you, that pride is your heart issue. So if you're going to wrestle with anybody, you're going to have to wrestle with God, like Jacob did, and have a name change. A name change, and ultimately a behavior change. And so, was that a good dream or not? The name of that dream was The Incredible Hawk. Let me just recap some things. We said the purpose of dreams. One was that the Lord said, according to Joel 2:28 and also Acts 2:17, that he was going to pour out his spirit on all flesh. And your sons and your daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. And so this is actually a fulfillment of scripture, that when you dream, this is fulfillment of scripture, because the Lord said he was going to pour out his spirit on all flesh. Then the second thing that I highlighted It comes out of Job 33, 14 and 18. And Job said it like this: indeed, God speaks once or twice, yet no one notices it. In a dream, a vision of the night, when you're sound asleep, when your sound sleep falls on men while they slumber in their beds, then he opens the ears of men and he seals in their instructions. So God used our dream language to actually seal in your instruction. You ever had a dream that upon awakening, you couldn't even remember the dream? Sometimes the Lord even seals the instruction or hides the instruction from you, that he may turn man aside from his conduct. That's what he did to this dreamer. And keep man from pride. He keeps back his soul from the pit and his life from passing over into Sheol, which is hell. The third thing the Lord promised to do with dreams, he said he'll speak through prophecy. He'll give dreams and visions. He'll give mature prophecy for servants, and then he'll give us signs and wonders. And so this is all a promise of him pouring out his spirits. And then the fourth thing that I said was dreams capture our undivided attention. God is he's a supernatural God who communicates with his people through supernatural means, okay? The Bible refers to angels over 300 times. So angels is a supernatural, well, they're ministering angels, and it's another aspect of God intervening and giving us dreams. And angels a lot of time brings us the messages of the dreams. I've had encounters with, and this is not to sound super spiritual, but I've had several encounters with the Archangel Gabriel, who is the minister of communication in heaven. And so I've had angelic visits that God has given me supernatural revelation through those angelic visits. The Bible refers to dreams and visions in different variations over 200 times. And so I'm establishing the framework that this is a very biblical dynamic, and that that dreams and visions have been hijacked by the occult or by false prophets or workers of magic, when this is actually a gift to the body of Christ. And I personally am taking back what the enemy has tried to hijack from the saints, which we have biblical mechanical means of interpreting and understanding our dreams, and we don't have to divert to the Young method of interpreting dreams, or to the Sigmund Freud method of interpreting dreams, which are all demonic ways of interpreting dreams. And the Old Testament as well as the New Testament is filled with examples of God giving us dreams as a means of communicating to our hearts and giving us instructions and actually showing us the condition of our hearts, like he did in this dream. So again, I want you to send your dreams in, because I would like to see this become highly interactive. So if you would send in personal dreams, then I will start to interpret some of your dreams, and we will discuss them live once a week. I said that I will come on once a week, about 30 minutes at a time, to talk to you about dreams that have come in throughout the week. And then we can talk about, I'll try to choose from different categories so that we can sort of work through the mechanics of unraveling the dreams and understanding how to interpret your own dreams. I'll start to give you a biblical framework to understand your own dreams or the dreams that you dream. But send your dreams into, and if you don't mind, Linda, putting this on the screen for me, dreams, DREAMS, at Hannah's Cry, HANNAHSCRY.net. Dreams at hannahscry.net. And then you can also be a blessing to the ministry on Cash App at $Eyes2See. That's capital EYES, numeral 2, SEE. God has given me eyes to see. So if you want to send your dreams in, have them interpreted live. We're going to do it live. We're going to do this and have this more interactive and more fun. I think it'll be a lot more fun if, oh, you're welcome, Kat. It's so good to see you. V-side in the house. V-side means Vashon family. That's my college, my high school, my alma mater. And it's so good to see a lot of my high school classmates support my ministry. The Cash App, again, Linda, is capital EYES, numeral 2, SEE. Eyes2See, and put a $sign before that. Eyes2See. And just confirm that you did get it, or I can repeat it once again. So we've done 2 dreams in the last 2 weeks. Last week, thank you, Carolyn. That's it. Right on target. Last week we did a war for a dream, and I actually got great feedback from that dreamer, who actually confirmed that before his birth, his mother had experienced 3 miscarriages, which confirmed that that spirit of abortion was in operation, which that the spirit of abortion operates like this, that if a woman has an abortion, then sometimes you'll see that spirit manifest by making that woman or that family lineage barren, or you will see women start to miscarry after that abortion. And so it's not unusual to see women that have had an abortion become barren, can't conceive again after that abortion, or if she conceives, you will start to see her having trouble being able to carry that seed to full term. And guess what's in operation? The spirit of abortion is in operation when that happens. So 2 things happens when the spirit of abortion is in operation. You see barrenness, unfruitfulness. A barren womb is a sign of unfruitfulness in the individual's life. Barrenness or miscarriages. That's what happens when the spirit of abortion comes in. And that spirit also came in. It not only murdered children in the womb, it also murdered the father's ministry career. He later did confirm that his father was a minister in the gospel, and that his father, after his mother miscarried like 3 times, that eventually the wife dies when he was only 4 years old, when the kid who had this dream was only 4 years old. And when the wife dies, after finally being able to conceive and give birth, the husband who was in ministry, the enemy caused him to lose his way. And it actually was a death of a ministry, and he never returned to ministry. And that's why he saw the father die in that dream, because his destiny, he may have lived in the natural, but essentially he lost himself when he lost his wife, and he never completed the assignment that was upon his life. And what a tragedy to live out your days but not live out your purpose. What a tragedy. So I just want to thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in and staying with me through this broadcast. I'll be back next week. Send the dreams in once again to dreams@hannahscry.net. You can be a blessing to the ministry at $Eyes2See, EYES, numeral 2, SEE. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I'll see you again next week this time. Be blessed.